We'll do it live. We'll do it live. So, anyway, might as well not beat around the bush here. There's this thing called Western civilization, and I keep hearing this term over and over and over again in use in the media, particularly in Republican media, but not just Republican media. It's used internationally by the conservative party. They're very conservative. They don't want to go, they don't want to do anything too rash. They don't want to be too rash. So they're very conservative. They like to conserve their emotions. They're emotionally very stable, and they're not really extreme in any direction. And so they like to use this term called Western civilization. Does anybody know what that means? Western civilization. What is that? Can anyone tell me what that is? Western civilization. And so I keep hearing this a lot. And so if you're a Republican or you're a conservative, there's this term you're allowed to use called Western civilization. And everybody secretly knows what this means. So it's like you're talking in code. It's a way to speak in code. But the funny thing is the people that are using this code, a lot of them don't really mean it. A lot of them don't really mean it. But it's funny. I use this meme. I use this image from the Dukes of Hazzard for this video, which is hilarious because I actually lived at a time where you could still have a Dukes of Hazzard show and have the stars and bars on there. What an amazing time to live in. We still had stuff like that when I was a kid. So many things. Okay, so here's this thing. Okay, I just put a Western civilization into Google. AI overview. AI overview. Western civilization is a broad term referring to the cultural and historic developments primarily originating in Europe and the Mediterranean, which have spread globally through colonialism and globalization. It encompasses social norms, ethical values, political systems, and technological advancements rooted in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and medieval Europe. I think that's a pretty good definition. So, in other words, white people. You mean white people, right? Is that what you're saying? You mean white people. Is that what you just said? AI overview? You mean like white people? Now, here's the weird thing, right? Western civilization is a way of getting around saying white people. So why not just say white people? Why is that bad? Are you mad that I just used that term? If you're watching YouTube, does that bother you that I said white people? I think it does. I actually think it does. I think some people get very emotionally distraught by just saying white people. Those two words together, white people, Western civilization. Instead of saying Western civilization, you could just say white people, right? But what if people started saying white people instead of Western civilization? That would cause problems. Because white people are not supposed to exist. That's the whole thing that happened in Western civilization, is that they outlawed white people. Starting around, I don't know exactly when that started. They really outlawed it, I guess, in the 1960s. White people were outlawed in the 1960s, and then it took 60s into the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, with the laws to really take hold and take root. And they pretty much eradicated the white people in many areas across Western civilization. So now you're just left with ideas. America's an idea. It's an idea. It's not people. It's an idea. So anybody can be an American or anybody can be whatever, because it's just an idea. It's just an idea that came from where? From white people. That's the problem. See, that's the problem that everybody has in Western civilization. This is a real problem that I'm talking about. I'm not just making this up. I didn't make this up. This is a problem. It's a problem for people. It's a problem for non-white people. Look, it's a problem for Hispanics. It's a problem for African Americans. It's a problem for Asians. It's a problem for Muslims. Why? Because they keep saying it's a problem for them. And then the white people are like, no, it's fine. We're not racist. We'll capitulate. And so they lost everything. So the whole thing was just like that's what it boils down to. But let's just look. Okay, so you got these different people. And okay, here key periods and influences. Here's a more detailed breakdown. Ancient Greece and Rome. Okay, well that's where it started. In ancient Greece specifically if you want to find out like where did I'm sorry, I can't say that. Where did Western civilization originate? Where did it start? As just like purely this is quote unquote Western civilization. Athens. Athens. That is the core. That is the core. That is the core of Western civilization. The Romans copied Athens. The Romans copied that type of architecture, or maybe they are already doing that because a lot of them were the same race. But it really started with Athens. It really started with Greece, particularly that race of people in Greece, in the Greek islands. And they were white people. They were blondes and redheads and brunettes, but they were white. I mean, it wasn't something else. They were obviously mixed to some degree later, and other people got involved, but the core of it was literally white people, like white people, redheads, blondes, blue-eyed, Alexander the Great. Like they were white. It wasn't when you look at back in history and like, oh, they weren't white, they were tan and they were olive. No, 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 no. Those were later, or those were the Etruscans, or those were some other people in the area. There were other people around, but it was white. It was like literally white people that caused all that, and they were the cause of all that. And they're so we got here. Key periods and influence: ancient Greece and Rome. Okay, we says these civilizations laid the foundation for Western thought, including democracy, philosophy, and legal systems. That's correct. Next, it says medieval Western Christendom. Rise of Christianity and its influence on art, literature, social structures shaped the medieval period. True. I think it's a pretty good breakdown on Google. So it starts with the Greeks, and then it moves into Greeks plus Christianity. That's true. That's a good breakdown. First, it's the Greeks, and it's Athens, Sparta, Greeks, the white race specifically. They developed the sciences. They developed this whole. You ever heard of an atom, the smallest particle? That's Greek. All the sciences that people say that were developed by all these other people, it all originated with the Greeks. The sciences of you have physics, that's Greek. Physics is Greek. So anyway, starts with Greeks. Western civilization is Greek. It's Athenian. It's the white race specifically. Then, because of Alexander, he invades the East. He invades Syria, Judea, Chaldea, Egypt. And you get a merger with the Judeans. The Judeans became Stoics. When you hear about these people called the Essenes, I don't even know if that's the correct pronunciation. I assume it is. But you have to understand there's no vowels in that type of writing system. So it's always consonants. So it's S-N. S-N? S-N? That could mean sin. That means the moon. Synagogue. I mean, it's kind of the same, right? S-N. S-N. I would say that we don't know that it's pronounced a scene. We know it's an S and an N as far as the consonants. With a sin, sin is the synagogue. Sin is the moon in Akkadian. I don't know. I'm an etymologist, so I think about these things. But the Essenes, or however you want to pronounce it, they were Stoics. They were Stoics. They were Stoics. And so they had adopted this Greek idea of Stoicism in the search of the Logos. But then you also have the Israelites that came out of Egypt, which created that whole basically social system of Judea. So there's many parts to that. But so when you think of Western civilization, here's what you have to understand. It's the white race and Athens, and then with Alexander the Great and all that stuff, because he came out of the philosophy of Athens and the Logos. And then that goes into Egypt, Judea, Syria, Chaldea. Then the Greeks, they encounter a new culture. They learn about the culture. They adopt some of the words from the East, like Uranus, Uranu, which is the heavens. They renamed the heavens after the Uranu. Some of the letters. I don't want to. I'm getting too complicated. Sorry. What's the next thing? The Renaissance, Reformation, Enlightenment. Good. Okay. So after the rise of the Romans, that was the second thing that happened. So the Greeks were the purest form of Western civilization was the Greeks. The white race and Athens. That was the purest form. And they were not superstitious. They had abandoned pagan gods in favor of the Logos. They were very scientific in their thinking. Purely scientific in their thinking. They were following the Logos. Then they merged with Christianity, and the Romans. Then you have the rise of the Romans, and then you have the Renaissance and Reformation, the Enlightenment period. So now people are seeing some of the flaws in the Roman system and some of the flaws in the Roman ideas and the imposition of these kind of strange ideas which came out of the Semitic Judean superstitions, because it wasn't really well understood. I understand the Bible very well, and I can separate superstition from allegory, but the Roman Catholic Church didn't necessarily, and they spread a lot of superstition and weird ideas that weren't true. So as it came into Europe, you have people getting back to this idea of reason and logic and abolishing superstition and like false ideas about God and trying to get back to reason. And this was the Renaissance period, they call it. Then you have the Industrial Revolution and Scientific Revolution. Okay, well this is the later scientific revolution, because the earliest one was in Athens with the Greeks. And the Greeks were very closely tied also to Egypt. We cannot forget that. And Egypt was kind of a complicated history because most of what happened in Egypt was lost. And then there was some civilization on the earth that basically got wiped out, that Egypt was the ruler of. And I know this personally. I just have personal recollection of this. It's my personal recollection that I was part of something with that somewhere along the line. You gotta understand, God is the animated force in the universe, so God is timeless. God is timeless, and God is the core of your soul. So everybody's soul is eternal and returns to God at death, and God lives through humanity. And so everything you do in life lasts forever because God lives forever. And so everything you do lasts forever as a memory. There was an Egyptian something or another, and it was a great power on the earth, and there was some kind of a war between Egypt and Mars. And Mars is gone, and Egypt is gone, but the earth is still here. But I don't know that there's any life on Mars, is there? Elon Musk is trying to get back over there. But let's not go into that. So that's the Renaissance Reformation. Then you have the Industrial Revolution. Then you have the rise of liberal democracy. Let's not even count that as anything. That's just the Pope and the Roman Empire trying to take out the white race again. So anyway, there's this thing called, okay, let's do this. Western civilization, right? Let's see what people say on, like, you've got these YouTube videos, right? Let's go to YouTube. Let's see what people say about Western civilization. YouTube. What do people say about Western civilization? I'm gonna type in Western civilization. Might get some. Let's see what people say. Okay, so. Oh, here's me. Oh, here's what's his face. No, the rise and fall of the West, decline of Western civilization, how Islam saved Western civilization. Oh my God, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Listen to this. What did? See, this is such garbage.
I actually want to start.
This is Dr. Roy Casangranda.
So the title of this talk is "How Islam Saved Western Civilization."
Okay, now do you notice anything about this man's voice? I've never heard of this guy before, but just listen to his voice and tell me if you notice anything.
To start, I actually want to start by admitting something, which is, so the title of this talk is "How Islam Saved Western Civilization." For the record, I believe that is a totally accurate statement. There's nothing, this isn't an attempt to back away from that title at all. The thing I want to admit is the title of this talk is "How Islam Saved Western Civilization." I have nested a contradiction in the title that I'm going to show you later on purpose, because I like to do things like that.
Okay, this guy, this is like some guy in a university. Do you see why do you see how stupid how this has become? Okay, people like this guy, whoever this guy, I've never even heard of this guy before. But you notice how his voice sounds compared to how, okay, I don't mean to brag, but how my voice sounds versus how his voice sounds. Like he go like that. Kind of like that. That's kind of how he sounds. Like he's kind of like craven. I don't know what's the word. What is the word for somebody that's kind of like crawling around on the ground and like laying on their back and exposing their belly? What is that? Okay, listen, that was ridiculous. I don't even want to go into that. Yeah, that's just an example of why we're losing. Who are some of these other people that talk about Western civilization? Here's Musk. Okay, check it out. Okay, here's Musk and Rogue. Let's see what they say.
The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. The empathy exploit. They're exploiting a bug in Western civilization, which is the empathy response.
I actually agree with that. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, Musk. That's pretty good. I think you've identified something there. Yes, we have empathy. We care about other people. Do the other races? No. Look, people who've traveled to China and reported back what it's like there say that people get hit by cars or something and they just bleed in the street. People walk right by them. And you look at like how they treat animals in China or how they treat animals in Mexico or how they treat animals in the Middle East versus how we do. Usually it's better. Not always. There's some really scummy people among our race, among the white race. But they're not the norm. They're kind of like the exception. So there's that thing, the bell curve. We're not all equal within our race. Within the white race, there's no equality. There's shitty people, and there's normal people, and there's super excellent people. I like to think that I'm in the super excellent I'm in the super excellent part. And then there's the normies, and then there's the really shitty people. So we have it all. There's a spectrum of behavior within the white race. But so what does Musk say here is pretty interesting.
So, and I think empathy is good, but you need to think it through and not just be programmed like a robot. The fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. The empathy exploit. They're exploiting a bug.
Yeah, but by they, you know who he really means? People are going to say he means the Jews. The Jews are doing this all to us. No, it's actually the Romans. It's actually the Pope. The Pope exploits that. The Pope exploits that. It's the Roman Catholic Church exploits that, and they use it to grab power. They use it to seize power. They use it to seize power for themselves, so they can kill you. There is some Jewish mafia working with them. There's a lot of mafias working with them. But yeah, that's a good. I actually agree with Musk on that one. Even though Musk has eradicated my X account because I didn't agree with his H-1B visa shit on Christmas. That was my Christmas present from X, is losing my X account. What's this one? I don't know. Here's some weird shit. What is this?
I've probably punched out everybody I know at one time or another, but I've always ran afterwards because I can't fight. The police were all calling me names, and they made me take a shower because they said I smell, and they asked me why I don't wash my clothes more often. I'd probably hit that straight in the face. I don't like clothes very much. Is the time up now? I've probably punched out everybody I know.
Okay, I don't know what that is. Here's some guy talking about Western civilization. Listen to this guy.
Anyway, we had a conversation about the end of Western civilization and what it meant for polite society to have a 24-hour infomercial that just never went away, and whether or not, there was any honor at all in auditioning for such a thing. And anyway, we had a conversation about the end of Western civilization.
Okay, what is Western civilization though? Can anyone? I'm saying that Western civilization is the white race. Here's Bill Maher. New rule: the war on the West, real time with Bill Maher. Oh, here's Maloney delivers powerful message on Trump defending Western civilization. Let's listen to this one.
Mr. President, thank you for your warm welcome. Thank you for this occasion, which is a...
What the hell's going on?
Is April 17.
Here we go.
And April 17 marks the anniversary of the agreement that allowed Cristoforo Colombo to make his trip. And I say...
Christopher Columbus, she's talking about.
To remember our ancient our ties, but also to remind that we both share another fight, which is the fight against the woke and ADI ideology that would like to erase our history. And as I know that we share lots of things on tackling illegal migration.
Okay, so does she mean what? Does she mean the white race? When she says we're allied in defense of Western civilization in our history, by our history, does she mean the white race? What is she talking about? Because that's what I mean by it. I don't mean anything else. Because there isn't anything else. That's what it is. It's the white race. If you think it's something else, I don't know what you're talking about.
Fighting against synthetic drugs. Italy has been one of the nations that made a plan against fentanyl, for example. But we have been talking about many bilateral topics and things.
Right, it's not just Italians. Oh, yeah, by our history with that, we had some Italians. No, it's not that they're Italian. It's the white race. That's the whole point. The whole point is the white race. That's the whole point of Western civilization. Without the white race, you don't have Western civilization. There is no Western civilization without the white race. So if you care about Western civilization, that means you care about the continuation of the white race. And if you're not white, but you like but you like Western civilization. That means you like living around white people, or you like what the white people have made as far as civilization goes, and you want to participate in that because you think it's better than the other shit. See, that would be a smart idea for you to say that, because that's true. And if I wasn't white, if I was an African person, an African American, or somebody else, I would say, yeah, you know what? I like these white people because it's pretty good here. They have good laws, and they have good this and that, and things are good. But that's not what's been happening. What's been happening is Rome wanted to get rid of the white race so that it could have more influence in America. So it started a race war. And it used blacks in the 1960s, and used Hispanics here and there, and it used different people. It used Muslims in Europe too, not just in America, but in Europe, to conquer Europe. See, before, originally Rome was like, oh, we're going to conquer Europe with Christianity. And then Rome's like, now that's over. Now we're going to conquer America and Europe again with race war. With race war. That's what they did. Let's see what else we have as far as Western civilization goes. Is Israel crucial to Western civilization, and what do Jewish Texans have to do with it? That's an interesting question, I guess, but this is from Sims Brooks, who's obviously probably Jewish. The fact is, the only thing that matters in Western civilization ultimately is the white race and the ideology that came out of Athens, which has nothing to do with foreign gods, which has nothing to do with false gods, which has everything to do with reason, which is called the logos, which is the gateway to theos in Athenian philosophy. That's the core of Western civilization. Everything else derives from that. So actually, nothing else really matters. You don't need anything else if you have the logos to get to theos. And that was all invented by the white race in Athens. So literally, that is the core, and nothing else. You could say, oh, and we see how this applies in the Bible. We see how this applies in the Proverbs. We see how this applies in this story or that story in the Bible. Yeah, it does apply. And it applies in the story of Gilgamesh, and it applies in the story of the myth of Adampa, because it's in that story, so you can see it throughout humanity. But what you see throughout humanity is the logos, which was isolated as the most important thing by the Greeks. So yeah, it exists in other things. So here's here we have Mark Levin.
Mine and my family, retired Colonel, British Forces in Afghanistan Commander, Richard Kemp, Chairman of the Cobra Intelligence Group. Richard Kemp, they can't call you a chicken hawk. You're a combat veteran. You have fought.
So his greatest threat to Western civilization. Talking about Iran.
You know this mindset.
Clear on the mentality of the Iranian fanatical jihadist regime.
Okay, so here's the problem with this premise of Mark Levin, who's Jewish, was a Jewish Zionist guy, and the guy that he is on, who is apparently some kind of what?
They're not like the Russians. They're not like China even. They're not a country that is amenable to.
Is he British or is he Australian? Hold on.
They're not like the Russians. They're not like
terrorists, but terrorists in regime ever.
I mean, a nuclear-armed Iran would represent.
That's British. Okay. So that's a British guy. So it's a British guy and a Jewish Zionist guy, Mark Levin. And they're saying Iran is the greatest threat to Western civilization. No, it's not. No, it's the people here in America that are trying to. It's anyone who's opposed to the white race is the greatest threat to Western civilization. That would be the Anti-Defamation League. That would be Rome, the Pope. Pope Francis is dead. So it's Rome, it's the Vatican, it's the Catholic Church. And it's the Zionist organizations that go around trying to throw white people in prison for being white. Not Iran. Iran, see, this is the crux of the problem. You could say Iran is a threat to American interests, and I would agree. It is a threat to American interests. Should they take out Iran's nuclear armaments or this or that? Maybe they should. I'm not even saying they shouldn't. I don't know. Maybe that's the right thing to do. But saying it's the greatest threat to Western civilization is bullshit. You know what the biggest threat to Western civilization is? Not replicating. The biggest threat to Western civilization is any group or ideology or law which is anti the white race. And where are those being originated from? The US government, the European Union, the British government that's locking up white people for quote unquote being racist. Iran's not doing that. Iran is not doing that. You're doing that to yourself. If you're white and you support these laws to kill off the white race in your own country in favor of other people, you're doing that to yourself. The Iranians aren't doing that to you. So they're not the greatest threat to Western civilization. They could be a threat to various things, but not Western civilization. That's stupid. It's just dumb. Western values.
I'm Mr. Beats. I'm here in the Western world where we do Western things and we have Western values. You know what Western values are, right?
No, what are they?
Wait, what? Oh, is that why you clicked on this video to watch? Very well then, let's try to define what Western values are. I think I'm gonna go grab my old trusty dictionary. Hey, while I'm doing that, Ellie, can you play that clip I have pulled up on my computer for the audience? Great. She's going to play, yeah, that one right there. She's going to play that while I find my dictionary.
Okay, let's skip ahead. It's
Historically been heavily influenced by Europe. For that reason, the West has often expanded to the Americas, Australia, and New Zealand.
So in other words, the white race. Okay, end of story. Why is BlackRock and JP Morgan never mind. Oh, here's Pete. This what is this Peterson guy? Here, listen to this guy.
The fundamental assumptions of Western civilization are valid. How about that? You know, it's not.
Jordan Peterson.
You think it's an accident?
He's totally bankrolled by Jewish mafia.
Which countries do people want to move away from? Hey, not ours. Which countries do people want to move to? Ours. Guess what? They work better.
What do you mean by ours, though? Do you mean the white race? And why are you happy that people want to move away from their country and come to the white race? So you're saying you support... See, this is the problem. People like Jordan Peterson, who's basically paid by the Jewish mafia in the state of Israel, which is not helping Western civilization by doing this shit, says, see, all these foreigners want to live with us. That means we're good. That's great. No. That's not great. We got to have our own stuff. And if you ask Jordan Peterson, well, should the white race have its own stuff? Should the white race have its own governments? Should we have our own everything? Should we just do our own thing? He'll say, no, that's bad because that's racist. So Jordan Peterson wants to say the Western civilization, the white governments, the white people, populations are the best because all the non-whites want to live with us. And that's good. That's what's weird about it. That's what he does. Here's the origins of here we go.
See, around 700 and 650 BC, Hesiod's works and days, the great tragedians, Sophocles, Aeschylus, Euripides, for a particular place we look at it.
Okay, so anyway, long story short, you've got a lot of political organizations talking about Western civilization, and they're saying it's good that we are bringing in all these foreigners because they want to be part of Western civilization. But if you bring in all the foreigners to Western civilization, you no longer have Western civilization. And Rome, the Vatican, and also the Jewish mafia is supporting all this they're specifically anti-white political movements in Europe and in America, which is the only thing that's what Western civilization is. Until you can just say, look, Western civilization is the white race, until you can do that, then this is why you're losing, and you're going to keep losing. No other race on earth is afraid to say that their race is the core of their civilization. The Chinese will tell you, because it's obvious, that the Chinese race is the core of Chinese civilization. That's not controversial. And the Arabs will tell you that their race is the core of Arab civilization. That's not controversial. And the Africans will tell you that their race is the core of African civilization. So until you can say that the white race is the core of quote unquote Western civilization, when you can say that, then you'll have a chance in the future. Otherwise, you're just lying to yourself. End of stream.